I think one of the biggest advantages to owning a virtual background system is the fact that you can create your own custom background library. Clients are getting ever so sophisticated, and their search for that something different has never been so prevalent in our business. With the background projection system, it's easy to provide that something different, but what's more is the variety that can be achieved in a single portrait session. As you know, changing backgrounds is as easy as changing transparencies in the projector. Much like Photoshop and a multitude of plugins, as well as Corel's Painter, extend the creative process beyond the image being captured, I think that having the ability to create your own backgrounds extends that creative process to long before a client even comes into the studio for their session. As photographers, we look at the world through a viewfinder, even though we may not even have a camera with us at the time. But as an owner of a virtual background system, I look at the world for backgrounds. Over time, I've been able to discover unique backgrounds in the most unlikely places. With some manipulation in Photoshop, some of my digital captures have the potential for being my next most popular background. There's a few choices in creating your own background transparencies. First, you could go through that old box of slides you accumulated during all those years you shot film. I know I'm dating some of us. Or you could create the file digitally from scratch in Photoshop or Painter, and then have your commercial lab create the transparency from your digital file. Still, another option is a stock photo agency like iStockPhoto.com. This is a great option when you need something quick for an upcoming event. Or you can capture digitally with any digital camera with adequate resolution. I've even used my iPhone images, and then enhance the file in Photoshop prior to sending it to the lab for a transparency. Most of my backgrounds are created by capturing various scenes with my digital SLR. I always suggest to people who are new to creating their own backgrounds in this manner to have someone stand in that scene that you think would make a nice background. Photograph this person, creating a nice portrait of them, paying attention to the light patterns and the ratios. Here's a scene in the alley behind the studio. Seniors are gravitating towards graffiti, old warehouses, and staircases. This no parking sign has been the site of many senior portraits. Here's a quick shot of my assistant for reference. Notice the lighting pattern, the open shade. It's not going to be easy to reproduce in the studio later. I then had her step out of the scene and rephotograph the scene with a wide-angle focal length. Some scenes will photograph much better earlier or later in the day rather than when the sun is high in the sky. The important thing to remember is that the light that you see illuminating your scene and subject needs to be replicated in the studio later. So learn to look for light patterns in nature that are similar to those that you create in the studio, like 45-degree soft lighting or maybe butterfly lighting. I've also learned over time that in order to create a transparency that is as versatile as possible, I go for scenes and abstracts that may not have a distinct light pattern. With some help from Photoshop, I quickly run a couple of filters and do some retouching to create an image worthy of sending off to the lab for a transparency. It's important not to crop the scene too tight. Remember, you can always enlarge it with the zoom lens on the projector. I've also found that the images need to be warmed up considerably for use with the background projector. I usually start with about 15 points of red in the midtones and 10 points of magenta to the highlights, using a Photoshop color balance correction. This is because of the fact that we're photographing the reflection of the image coming off the projection screen, and the special coating placed on the screen in the manufacturing process can add to this cool quality. Additionally, feel free to play with light effects and artistic brushes and other filters. With my digital file ready to go to the lab, I save it as a high-quality JPEG and email it off for a 35mm slide to be made, which are just a few bucks. Once I have the opportunity to use the background in the studio for a couple of weeks, I can make further adjustments to the file if they're needed before sending it back to the lab to have a glass-mounted super slide made. I generally try to make my background images fit a square format. That way it doesn't matter if I'm doing portraits in a vertical or horizontal fashion. I don't have to worry about the edges of the slide mount showing up in the background. How cool is it to create your own backgrounds that fit your style and your customers' demands? Think of the possibilities. What's also important to keep in mind is how growing your library of backgrounds allows you to offer your clients backgrounds that no one else offers. This makes a virtual background system a very powerful marketing tool as well as a powerful creative tool. Oh, and I almost forgot another way to increase your background library. Virtual Backgrounds has hundreds of background transparencies available, and they're adding to their libraries all the time. View them online at virtualbackgrounds.net. I've also made a few of my favorite sets available, and you can see those at trevonbaker.com/VB.